5,000 souls, sealed inside a single ship, adrift in the heart of the ocean. This is not a cruise, but the reality of the USS Gerald R. Ford, a $13 billion floating city and the most expensive war machine ever built. Spanning over 1,100 feet and towering with technology never before seen at sea, it took more than a decade and the GDP of a small nation to create. Food, sleep, power, survival. Everything must be generated from within, every day, for months at a time. But with this scale comes a question no one on land ever faces. How do you keep thousands alive and on mission when there's nowhere else to go? The answer is stranger and more dangerous than you might think. $13 billion. That's the official price tag for the USS Gerald R. Ford, more than the annual budget of entire countries like Jamaica or Mongolia. And that's just the construction bill. Before a single sailor ever stepped aboard, another $4.7 billion had already vanished into research and development, blueprints, and prototypes that would either revolutionize naval warfare or haunt the program with technical headaches for years. Congress signed off on the project in 2006, convinced that the next-generation carrier would guarantee American naval dominance well into the 21st century. Shipbuilders at Newport News got to work, laying the keel in late 2009. But this was no ordinary ship. It would take more than a decade before the Ford was ready to leave the pier, 11 years from first steel cut to commissioning in July 2017. That's longer than it took to build the Empire State Building, the Golden Gate Bridge, and the Hoover Dam combined. Delays piled up as engineers wrestled with 23 brand new systems, from electromagnetic catapults to high-tech radar. Each innovation brought fresh technical puzzles and fresh invoices. The original cost cap set by Congress was $10.5 billion. But as the years went by, that ceiling was raised again and again. By the time the Navy accepted delivery, the Ford had blown past every previous record for military spending on a single ship. Every major milestone came with scrutiny. Pentagon auditors flagged the project for cost overruns and missed deadlines. Congressional hearings grilled Navy program managers about why the elevators didn't work, why the propulsion system needed redesign, and why the ship sat idle at dock while fixes dragged on. Critics called it a runaway experiment. Navy leaders called it an investment in the future, a floating city that could project power anywhere, anytime, for half a century. But here's what most civilians never see. When you pour $13 billion and a decade of labor into a single warship, you're not just building a machine. You're creating a city that has to survive on its own, far from land, for months at a time. Every dollar, every year, every setback is baked into the steel, the wiring, and the daily lives of the 5,000 people who will call this ship home. The Ford isn't just expensive. It's a test of whether American engineering can deliver a city that floats, fights, and endures, no matter the cost. Stretching 1,106 feet from bow to stern, the USS Gerald R. Ford is longer than 3 football fields end to end. The flight deck alone covers nearly 5 acres, big enough to swallow the entire Pentagon if you tipped it on its side. At full load, this ship displaces over 112,000 tons, outweighing a fully loaded cruise liner or the largest container ships on Earth. But mass is just the beginning. The Ford towers nearly 250 feet above the waterline, with its island superstructure rising higher than a 20-story building. The flight deck beam measures 256 feet across, wide enough to launch and recover fighter jets simultaneously while helicopters and drones hover nearby. Beneath the deck, a labyrinth of steel corridors, workshops, and hangars stretches for miles. There are more than 25 decks stacked from the double-bottom hull to the radar antennas on top. Elevators shuttle aircraft between the hangar and the flight deck, each one powerful enough to lift a loaded semi-truck. The ship's internal wiring, if stretched end to end, would reach from Norfolk to New York City. Over 1,100 miles of cables, pipes, and fiber optics packed into every compartment. What sets the Ford apart isn't just its bulk, but the leap in technology built into every inch. Engineers packed in 23 brand new systems never before seen on a carrier. The Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System, EMALS, replaces steam catapults, flinging jets off the deck with magnetic force. The advanced arresting gear brings them back in with digital precision. 11 weapons elevators, driven by electromagnetic motors, race bombs, and missiles from deep storage to the flight deck at twice the speed of older ships. The dual A1B nuclear reactors generate 600 megawatts of power, enough to light up a mid-size American city, with energy left over for future lasers and railguns. Building something this massive wasn't just a job, it was a generational project. Over 5,000 shipbuilders, welders, electricians, and designers spent more than a decade fitting together 1 million individual components. Some worked on the Ford from the day the keel was laid until the last hull number was painted on the bow. Their fingerprints are hidden in every weld, every bulkhead, every system humming below decks. For most, there's no plaque or parade, just the knowledge that their work keeps 5,000 sailors afloat and ready for anything, thousands of miles from home. This isn't just a warship. It's a floating city, engineered to survive and thrive in the most unforgiving environments on Earth. Feeding nearly 5,000 people at sea isn't just a challenge. It's a non-stop marathon that never lets up. The USS Gerald R. Ford's galleys run around the clock, churning out over 18,000 meals every single day. That's breakfast, lunch, dinner, and midnight rations for a population bigger than many small towns, all made possible by a tightly choreographed supply chain that starts thousands of miles away. Every egg, every carton of milk, every slab of beef begins its journey long before it hits the mess line. At the Navy's main supply depots, food is ordered, inspected, and packed onto pallets, each one checked for quality and security. From there, specialized logistics squadrons track and schedule deliveries, making sure nothing gets left behind. Timing is everything. If a single shipment goes missing or a key item spoils, the entire meal plan can unravel. Once the Ford is at sea, the real ballet begins. Supply ships, massive floating warehouses in their own right, rendezvous with the carrier in open water. The maneuver is called underway replenishment, or UNREP. Both ships match speed and course, cables stretch across the waves, and pallets swing through the air, sometimes for hours, as hundreds of thousands of pounds of food transfer from one deck to another. Helicopters thump overhead, lowering crates of fresh produce and frozen meat directly onto the flight deck. Every transfer is timed to the minute, because a delay could mean spoiled milk, thawed chicken, or a menu that suddenly runs out of options. Down below, the Ford storerooms are vast, refrigerated and frozen spaces the size of supermarkets, stacked floor to ceiling with everything from flour to fresh fruit. Automated inventory systems track every item, alerting culinary planners when stocks run low. On a typical week, the ship can receive up to 700,000 pounds of food in a single supply drop, enough to keep the crew fed for up to 2 weeks before the next delivery. Culinary specialists, about 100 strong, work in shifts that never stop. Each one is responsible for nearly 200 meals a day. Massive ovens bake fresh bread around the clock, while industrial mixers churn out enough pancake batter to fill a bathtub in minutes. During rush hours, serving lines move 12 sailors a minute, all while maintaining Navy standards for food safety and nutrition. The scale is staggering: 1,600 pounds of meat, 350 pounds of lettuce, 160 gallons of milk, and 20,000 cups of coffee disappear every day. Menus change to keep morale up, but variety depends on the success of every link in the supply chain. One missed shipment, and the cooks improvise, stretching ingredients, swapping recipes, and making sure no one goes hungry. Inspection protocols are strict. One contaminated crate can trigger a full kitchen shutdown. For the crew, a hot meal isn't just comfort. It's fuel for the next watch, the next flight operation, the next emergency. When you're trapped on a floating city in the middle of the ocean, food is more than just sustenance. It's a lifeline, a morale booster, and a daily reminder that every system, every person, and every pallet counts. If the supply chain falters, the entire mission is at risk. And on the Ford, that's a risk no one can afford. Privacy is a luxury that almost no one can afford on the USS Gerald R. Ford. For most of the 5,000 people aboard, personal space means a metal bunk stacked in a compartment with dozens of others. A rack, barely wide enough for your shoulders, with just enough headroom to sit up. These racks are arranged in triple tiers, coffin-tight, row after row. Each sailor gets a thin mattress, a lockable bin for valuables, and a curtain for the illusion of solitude. That's it. The entire living area per person? About 20 square feet, less than what you'd find in a small walk-in closet. Noise is constant. The hum of ventilation, the thump of footsteps overhead, and the low conversations of shipmates fill every corner. Sleep comes in shifts, with day and night blending together under fluorescent lights. Sailors become experts at tuning out distractions, a skill as essential as any technical training. Etiquette is strict and unspoken. Never sit on another person's rack, keep your gear stowed, and never, ever wake someone unless you have to. Even the act of opening a locker or zipping a bag is done quietly, out of respect for the few precious hours of rest. Personal touches matter more than ever. Photos taped to the bulkhead, a favorite blanket, a string of battery-powered lights. These small comforts transform a steel box into something resembling home. Some sailors swap stories or trade snacks, while others lose themselves in headphones or books, carving out islands of privacy in a sea of bodies. For junior enlisted crew, these compartments can house 60 or more people at a time, each one learning to navigate the unwritten rules that keep close quarters from boiling over. Rank brings a little more breathing room. Senior enlisted sailors might share a stateroom with one or two others, while officers get their own cabins, complete with desks and private heads. But even at the top, space is measured in inches, not feet. On board, everyone understands that comfort is rationed just like everything else. The ship's designers made some improvements: better air conditioning, quieter ventilation, improved lighting, but the core reality hasn't changed. Efficiency comes first. Every square foot saved in berthing means more room for equipment, supplies, or aircraft. Sailors adapt. They develop rituals, routines, and a tolerance for living shoulder to shoulder, day after day. In these crowded quarters, camaraderie and patience are as important as any tool or weapon. The Ford may be a marvel of engineering, but for the people inside, survival starts with learning how to share a city the size of a skyscraper, one rack at a time. On the flight deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford, order and chaos collide. More than 75 aircraft, F-35Cs, Super Hornets, Hawkeyes, and Seahawks, fill every inch of the 5-acre surface. Each jet is fueled, armed, and ready for the next mission. The goal is relentless. 160 sorties every day, rain or shine, with the pressure to launch even more if war demands it. Every movement is choreographed by the rainbow shirts. Yellow shirts stand at the center, directing jets with practiced signals, their eyes never leaving the aircraft. Purple shirts refuel the planes, hands stained with fuel and sweat. Red shirts move bombs and missiles from deep inside the ship to the waiting wings. Blue shirts clear paths, hauling chocks and driving tractors. Green shirts keep the catapults and arresting gear running, their work hidden beneath the roar. Each color marks a role, but all share the same urgency. Keep the tempo, never falter. EMALS, the electromagnetic aircraft launch system, has replaced steam catapults. Now, jets are hurled skyward by magnetic force, a system that's faster and gentler on the planes. Turnarounds are quicker, launches more frequent, but EMALS demands perfection. One missed cue, one software glitch, and the chain snaps. Deck crews train for years to anticipate each other's moves, knowing that a single mistake can mean disaster, a lost jet, or a life cut short. The deck never rests. Jets taxi forward, catapults lock, and another fighter vanishes into the sky. Landings are just as tense. Arresting wires snap taut. Crash crews wait, always ready. The target, 160 sorties, drives every action, from dawn to midnight. Amid the noise and wind, risk is constant. The deck is slick, the air electric with tension. Yet the choreography holds. Yellow shirts signal, pilots salute, EMALS surges, and the ballet continues, powered by discipline and trust. Deep within the hull of the USS Gerald R. Ford, the real heart of the floating city hums with quiet, unstoppable force. 2 A-1B nuclear reactors, each the size of a city bus, churn out 600 megawatts of power every hour of every day. That's more electricity than some entire countries produce, enough to light up a city of 100,000 people, keep every radar spinning, and launch jet after jet into the sky without breaking a sweat. The Ford's engineering crew, reactor duty chiefs and nuclear-trained sailors, work in shifts that never end. They monitor gauges, test backup systems, and run emergency drills in a world where a single mistake is not an option. Their workspace is a labyrinth of steel, pipes, and control panels, all hidden far below the waterline. Most of the ship's population never sets foot in these compartments, but every meal, every shower, every breath of cool air depends on their expertise. Power from the reactors isn't just for propulsion. It keeps the lights on in more than 3,000 compartments, runs the air conditioning that makes life bearable in the tropics, and drives the electromagnetic catapults that launch aircraft faster and more efficiently than ever before. But perhaps the most unsung miracle is water. The Ford's desalination plant turns seawater into more than 400,000 gallons of fresh water every single day. That's enough for every sailor to drink, shower, wash clothes, and cook, plus plenty left over for medical needs and firefighting. On most ships, water is rationed. On the Ford, the taps never run dry, no matter how long the mission lasts. With a reactor core designed to last 50 years, the Ford can sail for decades without ever needing to refuel. Its only real limits are food and spare parts. The ship can stay at sea for 90 days straight, cut off from the world, running on its own power, its own water, and the skill of its crew. When storms rage or supply lines falter, the Ford endures, its reactors humming, its city afloat, always ready. In the end, it's not just steel and technology that keeps the Ford alive, but the silent, relentless work of those who keep the lights burning and the water flowing, day after day, year after year. At a cost of $13.3 billion and housing over 4,500 crew, the USS Gerald R. Ford stands as the largest and most expensive warship ever built. This floating city produces 18,000 meals daily, generates 400,000 gallons of fresh water, and can launch up to 160 aircraft sorties in a single day. Its construction spanned more than a decade, marked by technical setbacks and rising costs documented in Navy and congressional reports. While its advanced systems, like EMALS and twin nuclear reactors, represent engineering milestones, many operational details and full performance data remain classified. What is clear is that the Ford-class carrier program reflects the scale and complexity of modern naval power. Today, the USS Gerald R. Ford is not just a war machine, but a vivid example of the challenges and stakes involved in sustaining thousands at sea. The story of this ship continues, shaped by both public records and the secrets it still keeps.